Come on in. Welcome, welcome. Greetings, greetings, YouTube. Greetings, Facebook. Greetings, Twitter. Come on in. Instagram. Come on in. All is a blessing. Yes, yes, yes. Welcome, UK. Welcome, Turkey. Come on in, Ethiopia. Come on in, Kenya. Welcome, welcome. Greetings, Ghana. Greetings, greetings, Nigeria. Boru, Aboye, Awushishe. Yes, come on in. Come on in, Yoruba. Come on in, Akan. Come on in, Iku. Come on in. Welcome. Come on in, Sangoma. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, Morocco. Welcome, welcome, Spain. France. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. Come on in. I have food for you. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, Matthew Ferguson. Greetings, beloved. All is a blessing, divine, all blessed peace and prosperity to you and yours. Welcome. Yes. Greetings, greetings. All is a blessing. Craig Burns. Welcome, beloved. Welcome, welcome. Anunnaki, Amin Ra, we appreciate you, beloved. Welcome. Come on in. Come on in, gods. Come on in, goddesses. Moons. Come on in, moons. Earths, where are you? Come on in. Come on in. All is a blessing. Yes. We're serving it up today, Obeah style. Welcome, welcome. Greetings, greetings. Welcome, welcome. Yes, I appreciate you all. T. Warner, thank you so much, beloved. Come on in. Greetings to my new listeners and participants. Greetings to my regular co-host. Greetings to my audience. Greetings to my fans. Greetings to my fanamies. Greetings. Greetings. All is a blessing. Come on in. Beloved Orisha, welcome, 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 beloved. Yes, come on in. We got power. We got power today. Come on in. Come on in. Greetings, Latanya. All is a blessing. It's a blessing to see you as well, beloved. It's a blessing to have power. It's a blessing to have water. It's a blessing to have sun and sky and wind and just a little bit of rain. Welcome. Come on in. Greetings. Come on back home to Africa. Come on back home. 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. All is a blessing. Eshu Alekwana Koksi Weri Awo Onlo Uto Ni Iwo Ada Afanbo Osi Obatala Mi Ita Ni Ibo Onilio Oban Eshu. Eshu is the respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He causes scattered to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May I ever reach a room. May I ever be accepted. May I ever allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Ashe. I have so much to say today, so please be patient with me. Be patient with me. All is a blessing. Divine, all blessed. Peace and love, joy and prosperity, elevation, revelations, and divine, all blessed manifestation. You are now listening live with the Divine Prince, sitting live with the Divine Prince, viewing live with the Divine Prince on many platforms. Pan-African Spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagun Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeah, Bokur, Dibia. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veil, sharing with you all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Again, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation. It is my reiteration and my personal ever living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my inner standing, my very being, my walk, my works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence along Mother Father Earth, including Hurricane Zeta. And it is my personal place of power and inner standing, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny. And I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe, Asheo. Greetings to each and every one of you, young and old, new, and as well as my continued supporters and listeners and co-hosts. I greet you, I greet you, I greet you this Friday. What is that? Halloween Eve, October 30th, 2020. And I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum, universally from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central LLC, in this beautiful, historic, legendary, enchanted, and some would say most haunted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this Hoodoo Obeah life path and journey, passing down the great Obeah stick along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, minerals, spirits, indeed the weather, and of course the culture, the ethno-cultural life and tradition of these practices that we now honor and acknowledge. And as my beloved Denise Augustine would say, our sacred stories. Please do continue to visit us at www.oursacredstories, OurSacredStories, oursacredstories.com for your tours plus experience. It's more than a tour, beloved. It's more than a tour. And you can visit us at www.oursacredstories.com to make your reservations, to get clarity about COVID-19 protocols, and to check for availability. I like to say, I always say, and I have been saying for many years, that the creation of sacred space is critical to all that we do. All that we do, all that we say, all that we project that we are, all that shows up right up front in our demonstration, the creation of sacred space. And the creation of sacred space in any moment, in any endeavor, in any environment, and indeed in any weather. For those of you who showed love, who showed support, who sent offering and donation. I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful. Indeed, we ducked and dodged and bobbed and weaved all season long with these hurricanes. Okay? But Zeta came in just shy of a category 3, right over the city. Some of you have seen a not so good video, but there's a video on my Instagram at one particular camera that sort of caught the movement of the storm, the physical movement of the storm, then that eye in the middle of the storm and that eye wall, and then sort of the electricity that Shango and Oya that kicked off with this hurricane. And indeed, it was powerful. It was powerful. And so the creation of space, sacred space, one that feeds your best interest, one that feeds your well-being, one that feeds your serenity and your peace and your sense of stability. We have to be able to kick that in any weather, even in the midst of a hurricane. And Hurricane Zeta came in fast, came in quickly. We didn't really have a whole lot of time to get alarms and alerts and, evacuation, and fortunately, the ancestors blessed us, the Most High blessed us, Oya and Shango blessed us, and we did endure a great deal of damage, but nowhere what it could have been had this hurricane had been just a little bit slower and had more time to stir things up. So it jumped. Oya leapt over us. She did a backflip right over the city, you know, and Shango, beat drums and made noise. And of course, the winds of Oya were the most intense part of the storm, I think, for a city like New Orleans that sits below sea level, that sits naturally below the water. So our first concern is always flooding, a repeat of Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina, it wasn't the disaster, it was the flooding that was the disaster. So we didn't have a whole lot of flooding, not here in this part of Louisiana. The winds, were like a blow dry. So any amount of, water that hit the ground, Oya was blowing it so quickly, we didn't have a great deal of flooding. But parts of my roof did come off. Some of you have seen the video. Some of those ancient historic ceramic tiles came off, damaged poor brother Joshua's car, obliterated the windshield. So we did have some damage. My fruit trees did turn over, but they were just heavy enough not to really go anywhere, but then light enough to sort of just lay down. Okay, so they weren't damaged, they weren't broken. The root bulb wasn't really disturbed in any real way. So I just had to go back and reset them. But I did lose, a couple more banana trees, and banana trees are prolific. It's one of the most prolific things that you can grow in this region. Some people look at banana trees as a pest. It will take over. It will keep coming back. It will continue to branch out and spread. So I'm grateful I'll always have bananas. And my little storage house supported probably my heaviest, quickly maturing bunch of bananas that are on the tree right now. So it's still in place. So we're grateful. We're grateful. Things could have been worse. For my hoodoo and root work and conjure folk out there, who like to collect spring water, who like to collect storm water. I get 100 gallons of storm water, 100 gallons. I am a grateful participant of the WaterWise program here in the city of New Orleans, which helps you to capture rainwater, particularly that rainwater that sort of runs down your house. And if you're in an older house or a wooden structure, really any structure, water can really damage, not just the foundation, but the physical structure of your house. If you don't have good gutter system, if you don't have a way of sort of doing something with that water. And traditionally, most people have gutters, and that water sort of runs right off into the ground. You know that's not a good proposition in a city like New Orleans. So WaterWise provides us these 50-gallon barrels that collect that water. So it makes it very easy for Obeah man like me to capture 100 gallons of powerful storm water, hurricane water, in an event like this. So we're indeed grateful. Greetings, friends. Voodoo GP, greetings, beloved. Greetings, greetings. We certainly appreciate all of our international listeners and participants. I think sometimes here in the U.S., we're guilty of not being aware that we're part of a global experience. I fortunately have the ability to sort of see the numbers behind the scene. So I know that there are people in France who are listening. I know that there are people in Paris listening, in London who are listening, in Spain who are listening. So thank you, Voodoo GP. We certainly appreciate your standing up and representing. Greetings, Sandra C, beloved. Uh, are you here or are you in the UK? I might be confusing your location, but I'm grateful for your presence always. Um, yeah, there's an opening happening, Matthew Ferguson. Some would say it happens seasonally. Greetings, Enzo Khalifa. Some would say that it happens, you know, every Halloween. Some suggest that the veils are thinnest at Halloween. I have always suggested that the veils begin to thin at Halloween, but are their thinnest that week between Christmas and New Year's Day. When we look at the signs, when we look at the symptoms, when we look at how people act, when we look at our anxiety and our fear, and in some cases our love and appreciation of family gathering and coming together, and what comes out of that during the holiday season, the veils are thinnest. I believe that the National Suicide Hotline would support that. I believe that many therapists and consultants and psychologists and psychiatrists would say that people are most sensitive during those, particularly here in the northern region, during those darker, colder months of the year. And I don't want to digress too much and get off into, you know, the Yule tide and where that came from and why they burned this fire and, you know, sort of this, what they would otherwise call pagan, you know, approach to nature. But it has everything to do with that venting. Greetings, Danette Gibbs, beloved. Forgive me for missing your call. At least I did get an alert, but there was no power. I just got my power back last night. My sister wife, beloved Tony Val, still does not have power. So everyone in the city doesn't have power. Everyone in the city of New Orleans and in Jefferson and in the general region still doesn't have power. So that would also affect their ability to sort of navigate the internet to some degree. Um, Many services that we take for granted don't function, you know, when there's no power, and there's a chain reaction. So I'm grateful to live in a neighborhood that has power, but there are many who don't. There's some who don't even have water right now, because remember, you need water. Greetings, Shamafia, beloved. I love your demonstration. No division, only liberation. That's right. And I love your demonstration. But there's many in the city who don't have water, who don't have power. Thank you, Arisha, for reminding everyone. Please hit the like. Please follow me, not just where you are in Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, but also go into my Blog Talk Radio. Please go into my blogtalkradio.com/the hyphen divine hyphen prince and also follow me and click like there. You can also call me now if you don't have a webcam and you want to participate in the show, you want to be a co-host, you have questions, comments, criticisms, request, you can call me at 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. Press the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I'll be very happy to open your mic and bring you into the conversation. Yeah, so we're in a state of recovery. Of course, I had many other things also going on, but the storm had much more to with my limited absence in most recent days. But I'm back, better than ever. I'm ready to hit it and hit it hard. I want to talk about Obeah today, if you will. Yes, owner of the storm and mother warrior was gentle to the city. They could have wiped this off the map, but they were indeed grateful to us. Iba Orisha, Mojuba Orisha. Greetings, Frida Nun. Greetings, beloved. Oh, priest, Awo, Lawo, Babalawo, Ifa Orisha, Yoruba, Ifa Toki. Peace, Baba. Ashe, oh, Ashe. Hello, greetings, uh, Evelyn Preston. And priest Awo, I want to have you on the show. I want to have other authentic West African representation on the show. I think you all underestimate the need for authentic demonstration here in the West, but from you, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from the very ancestral roots of which many people in this audience hail from. So let's make that happen. Greetings. Latanya Williams. I'm not sure if I acknowledged you before. Greetings, beloved. She's in River Ridge, Louisiana. If you can, call in, pop in on screen. Let us know what's happening in River Ridge, Louisiana. Greetings, Craig Burns. Thank you. I told you all this is an international audience. An international audience. And there was indeed a great deal of energy in association with this storm. Now, I know religious folk, Stone Mountain, Georgia. Yes, Stone Mountain, Georgia. Greetings to Goddess Initiative. I know it's easy sometimes for spiritual people, religious people, to sort of, overdo it a little bit when it comes to pronouncing, prophecy and connection and symbolism and meaning to natural weather events. Now, just as we've seen here in this room, understand, there's at least one person here who ain't here to support. At least one. And I got one email, one demonstration. I know who it was just based on the wording of the email. That sort of, again, associated the hurricane with the of New Orleans, the wickedness of the culture of New Orleans. Much like we see what happens when there's a hurricane or an earthquake in Haiti, and there's those evangelicals, there's Jehovah's Witnesses, there's those religious folk who stand up and say, oh, well, that's a sign from God. That's a demonstration from God. And so there's at least one, always at least one, who's here to observe your demonstration. Sarah Phoenix, greetings, beloved. Absorb your demonstration. But it's not a positive. It's indeed black tourmaline. It's indeed onyx. It's indeed black obsidian. It's a black hole of energy. And energy is eternal. Energy is infinite. All the energy that we will ever have exists right now in the universe. It transforms. It changes from one scenario to another. But all the energy, good or bad, negative or positive, we label it based on where we are in our experience. Good, bad, negative, and positive. But when we look at it from a cosmic perspective, from a universal perspective, from a hoodoo perspective, from a conjure perspective, energy is eternal. So the idea of what you send out comes back to you, very real, elementary, but very real. The idea of creating and recreating a reality that mirrors your best interests, very real, very real. But you have to be willing to face life on life's terms. Our ancestors had to face life on life's terms. When we look at the birth of Obeah in the New World, I want to first say Obeah is sort of a contraction of two words, OB, OBI, which we see in Yoruba and Igbo, in Akan. It's a very common word that the meaning kind of changes just a little bit, from location to location. And then there's Dibia, 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 Dibia. And Dibia is sort of a word among the Akan and in Ghana that mirrors how we use words like hoodoo, root work, here in the West. So I believe, first and foremost, Obeah is sort of a contraction of those two words. Some might even say, there's always that argument of pronunciation. New World pronunciation, with the man called it what we called it, what it was called back in its most ethnic form. So there's always that idea that words somehow get corrupted, words somehow get bastardized. For those of you who've seen the first part of the three-part series on zombies that I've been running on my social media and here in YouTube, there's a beloved sister, who references voodoo with four O's, as what's the word she used? Corrupt, or no, that's not the word she used. She used a much more salacious word than that. But the idea that words, hoodoo, voodoo, are somehow corruptions of, bastardizations of, without really doing much further look at the root to the words. And that still needs to be further developed. Our archaeologists and our historians and our PhD individuals still need to go a little bit further. I haven't written that book yet, but somebody else can move ahead on that. So Obeah, just like voodoo, just like hoodoo, just like conjure, are very loosely translated words throughout the cultural diaspora in the West. So we often root Obeah in Jamaica, as if it's singular to Jamaica, unique to Jamaica, only done in Jamaica. But we see it in Honduras, we see it in Belize, we indeed see it here in the southern regions of America. And the language over time changes. How it's referred to changes. Obeah, healing and protection in West Indian slave life. I'm going to get a little help from Kenneth M. Bilby and Jerome S. Handler. Obeah encompasses a wide variety of beliefs and practices involving the control or channeling of supernatural and spiritual forces, usually for socially beneficial ends, such as healing, bringing good fortune, bringing about protection, and of course, avenging wrongs. Although Obeah was sometimes used to harm others in its antebellum context, we'll say. Sometimes it was used to harm others. Europeans during the slave period distorted its positive roles in their lives of many enslaved persons. In post-emancipation times, colonial officials, local white elites, and their ideological allies exaggerated the antisocial dimensions of Obeah, minimizing or ignoring its positive effects. And so we know that Obeah, conjure, root work, voodoo would have been used to bring about some level of protection under an enslaved occupation. Mama, sisters being raped. Of course, there would have been a development of retributive magic under those conditions. But we also see, for the needs of racism, white supremacy, prejudice, the characterization of negative, evil, wicked labels on all aspects of ATR, all aspects of African traditional religious demonstration in the so-called New World, and not just Obeah. As I attempted to speak to, many of you are familiar with TV. You know there was some editing in the zombie episode. I said so much more than what is in the final cut. But Obeah indeed had its place of respect in our community, had its place of respect among the Maroons, had its place of respect among the enslaved, even those that had latched on to Christianity or Catholicism, if you will. But any opportunity for mainstream society to demonize anything that would have been of benefit to us was taken. And so Obeah also associated with revolution, much like voodoo in Haiti, it is greatly associated with revolution. To simplify it, the ability for us to uprise, the ability for us to say no and push back. And so Obeah became just as demonized. And so I would argue that the lack of verbiage that supports what would otherwise support us, uh, voodoo, maroon culture. You don't hear a whole lot about maroon culture in North America, though we know that it existed, particularly here in Louisiana, where we had over 200 maroon encampments documented. So the notion that anything that would give us power, that would give us freedom, that would give us liberty, being supported by the mainstream culture would have been just not realistic. So today we see a desire for ATR traditions. We see a desire for spirituality. We see a desire for magic. We see a desire for answers. We see a desire for resolution to our pains and to our problems and to our complex complications, if you will, in life. And many are turning away from what we would otherwise call organized mainstream religion and are seeking what appears to be liberating and empowering, freeing, but also edifying. And so Obeah, which encompasses a wide variety of beliefs and practices involving the control or channeling of supernatural spiritual forces, usually for social benefit, healing, bringing good fortune, protection against harm, avenging wrongs, at some point evolves into something that's much more warlike, much more battle oriented, and of course, vengeful in some cases, and enacting harm, some cases with a ego based motivation behind it, and so that's where the sort of dark. I'm still trying to remember that word she used in the documentary. A negative connotation of not only voodoo but Obeah begins to take root, not just in world culture or mainstream culture, but even now in our own communities. The word Obeah found across the Anglophone Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, is probably one of the most widely known African-derived terms in the region. However, there is little consensus among scholars on its meaning and significance, although many conceptions of Obeah, both in the past and in the more recent years stress its antisocial and evil nature as witchcraft or sorcery. And indeed, the term Obeah has come to be endowed with a malevolent, malign social power, much like the bad words, swear words, curse words, which can lead to legal sanctions if publicly uttered in Jamaica or other West Indian societies. Obeah is not an organized religion. It lacks a more or less unified system of beliefs, practices involving, for example, deities or gods, communal or public rituals and ceremonies, and the physical spaces, sacred spaces, or sites where they occur, or spiritual leaders of congregations, congregants, as in Haitian Voodoo, New Orleans Voodoo, Brazilian Candomblé, Cuban Santeria, or the Orisha religions, formerly known as Shango in the Trinidad Tobago region of the Caribbean. Rather, Obeah is a catch-all term, like I said about hoodoo, that encompasses a wide variety and range of beliefs and practices related to the control or channeling of supernatural and spiritual forces by particular individuals or groups for their own needs or on behalf of clients who come for help. Now, originally, on the 17th century slave plantations of the British Caribbean, these beliefs and practices drew on a number of common and broadly related African models or belief systems, including sacred traditions and medical knowledge, modified over the years by the New World environment, including its plants, animal life, European practices, beliefs, and material culture, glass bottles, rum, finely wrapped cigars, for example, and the social conditions and community tensions that existed under slavery. Although the specific beliefs and practices embraced by this term, Obeah, varied from place to place, Obeah everywhere shared at least two fundamental characteristics. Its practice involved the manipulation and control of supernatural forces, usually through the use of material objects and recitation of spells or incantations. And it was primarily concerned with divination. The divination applied to foretelling, finding lost or stolen goods, ascertaining the cause of an illness, healing and bringing good fortune and protection from harm, although it was sometimes used benevolently to harm others. The practice of Obeah usually involves specialists, often skilled in the use of plant medicines or concoctions involving roots, tree bark, things again found in nature, who were sometimes paid by individual clients, for their recipes, if you will. The practitioners, as well as their clients, could be men or women. Until fairly recent times, Obeah practitioners were not uncommon in most of the English-speaking Caribbean and generally practiced their art clandestinely because of a wider societal disapproval or prohibitive laws that existed for much of the colonial period. And of course, the overt, foot on the neck of the church in the Catholic and Protestant church that would have been prevalent in the Caribbean during that time, and many would say even still till this day. And perhaps it will help to arrive at a clearer understanding of this highly charged word, Obeah, if its meaning is examined in a specific Afro-Caribbean setting. Since it is generally agreed that the term Obeah and its primary referents are of an African origin, we start by considering a Caribbean region known for displaying a particularly high degree of African cultural influences. No area fits this description better than the interiors of Suriname in French Guiana, where present-day Maroons, mountain, semi-autonomous, so-called tribal societies exist. Their enslaved ancestors escaped from coastal plantations into the interior forest during the 17th and 18th centuries and founded societies beyond the reach of the enslavers. At present, among the Aluku or Boni of French Guiana, where Bilby was conducted over 3 years of field work during the 1980s and 1990s. The word Obeah, spelled Obia, has several meanings, with the most common being medicine, remedy, or healing power. And again, I want you to note the spelling Obia, which mirrors the spelling of Dibia, which is used still today in Ghana. And of course, that word Obi, which can be found in some Yoruba traditions, but also some other. Greetings, beloved Wapani, Wampani. Greetings, my sister. Moon Luck Love. Greetings, beloved. Greetings. Please forgive me for not giving greetings. Once I get into the meat and the material, sometimes I forget to check my chat. Jennifer Anderson, greetings. Welcome. From Florida, beloved, welcome. Does Obeah come from Ashanti? JP Tarot readings. That's what I am speaking to. Thank you so much, beloved. JP Tarot readings. That's what I'm speaking to right now. Ashanti, but we also find Obi in Yoruba language. We see Obi used to denote the coconut in Lukumi in Cuba. We know Obiabata in Yoruba to be a form of divination to, connect with and communicate with Ori and also with Eguns. So I'm sure there's a footprint in Ashanti. Texas, Corey, Yule, Adamus. Greetings, beloved. Also, Nyabingi. Yes, yes. Greetings, beloved. Bantu Viking, greetings, greetings, greetings. Thank you so much for being present. Florida is in the house. Thank you. Yeah, Obeah is like the term magic or Deo or Teo for sure. And it has a much deeper root to it that I'm trying to demonstrate expands more than just one ethnic group, like the Ashanti. Greetings, greetings. Fitness Girl Fun, thank you so much. There isn't much information available online about Obeah. And that's another reason why I'm doing this show, this broadcast. Your Adamus. Yes. Yes, yes. The spelling would deviate. And not just words like Obeah, but with many other words, the spelling would deviate depending on what region, what country, what geographical location in the New World that practice, that tradition would find itself. And when we consider the selling off of our family members, the selling off of enslaved Africans, they would carry their knowledge with them. And so these traditions, these practices would then spread. And those otherwise who would not acknowledge these practices, meaning those who had been fully ingrained into Catholicism, Protestantism, Christianity, that new slave, that new visitor would bring that knowledge, that power, and that information, just like the taste of freedom. It would only take one bad slave, in the mind of the oppressor to plant the seeds of freedom, to plant the knowledge, the idea that you could be liberated, that you could leave this place if you would just be willing, to put forth some effort, to put yourself at risk, to take some, necessary, dangerous choices. But we know through documentation that there were those who indeed survived, and particularly in a large region like Brazil, which has a huge geographical environment for Maroons to have escaped to and hidden in and remained hidden in for some time until their country, their regions, Jamaica, Brazil, Cuba, gained their freedom. Greetings, Anthony Watts. Greetings, beloved. Thank you so much for everyone who's here. Please do join the conversation. If you got your webcam set up, you can pop in here on screen with me by following the URL that I now have streaming at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to stop it just for a second so I can copy and paste it. You can also call me now at area code 845-277-9143, 845-277-9143. Do press the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And I can also bring your voice into the conversation. Greetings, Hoodoo Occultism. It's not happening. I don't know how long you've been listening. It's not happening. Much of the city still doesn't have power. I just got my power back last night. Tony still doesn't have power. Many of our community doesn't even have water. So I'm grateful to have power and water at this moment in time space. But this just isn't a good time to come to the city. So I hope you hear me. We can, of course, talk off air. But I want to say that while I had you right here in front of me. But thank you so much for being present. Obeah, Hoodoo, Voodoo has everything to do with location. And again, I understand you're just coming into the conversation. We kind of talked about that. It has everything to do with where the ancestors landed and what ethnic group, what ethnic cultural background came with them. And then, of course, what knowledge, what shared knowledge came with them. And as we had our families broken up, as we were sold away, as we escaped and went into maroonage, we carried that knowledge with us. Sometimes shared that knowledge, in a what do you call it, potluck, where everybody brings a dish, everybody brings their knowledge, everybody brings what they know to the table, and then these traditions that we now know today as Obeah, Hoodoo, Voodoo, with 4 O's, were then birthed and created. The idea that these were just bastardizations. Greetings, Mom. I'm so glad my mother's here. I'm so glad my sister Wapani is here. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the idea that these were bastardizations is not a fair characterization. Unless we're talking about the white book authors, the white filmmakers, the slave owners, the slave owning archaeologists, the slave owning historians that wrote a great deal of material that now documents this demonstration. They indeed brought bastardization to these traditions. They indeed spoke them out as something evil, as something negative, as something dark. And yes, beloved expert, in the zombie part 1 to the 3-part, yes, they did bring a vulgar. That's the word she used, vulgar. How many of you in this room are vulgar? How many of you identify your spirit practice as vulgar? So yes, voodoo was demonstrated as vulgar in the movies. Voodoo was demonstrated as vulgar in books of imagination and creativity. Voodoo was demonstrated as vulgar, in your talking radio shows. Back in the day, they didn't just play music. They had drama and series, soap operas on radio. And so they spoke vulgar into the equation with our traditions and our practice. But when you found someone authentically in the community acknowledging these practices, I think we would have a hard time. Uh, Experience with it. I am it. I have experience with it. I am in it. It's a part of our practice. It's a part of our tradition. Again, it's not far removed from hoodoo. It's not far removed from voodoo. It has everything to do with where you're located. Has everything to do with where you're living. Has everything to do with your knowledge of herbs, of plants, of roots, of toxins, of bacteria that exist in nature. Thank you so much, Mariah. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Let me check my phone lines, area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. I'm gonna give it a few more minutes on my phone lines and I'm gonna move it forward. All is a blessing. Yes, y'all, Adamus. Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a part of a bigger plan to demonize Black culture. Um, and yes, the same happened all over the world. Everywhere you find the footprint of the missionary, of the colonist, of the oppressor, of the enslaver, of the person who feels they need to dominate the world, not just explore it and find new things, but to control it, to own it. And if I can't control it or own it or capitalize on it, then I demonize it. And so we saw this. And so there is the fertile soil for the birthing of traditions like voodoo with 4 O's, hoodoo, conjure, Obeah, as we see it manifest, not just then, but today. The main system of divination in Obeah, because of the absence of the structure of voodoo, the structure of lukomi, the structure of a traditional ethnocultural practice, then the systems of divination are varied in Obeah. So you see forms of divination that manifest in nature, And for some of you, that are a little bit squeamish, this is going to be just a little bit graphic. So there's that animal divination, sometimes where they open up the animal and they examine, the organs, the guts, the inner body parts. There are demonstrations in nature where nature speaks back to you. Birds speak back to you. The patterns of animals speak back to you. And again, these have root in West African tradition. Some Dibia practitioners in Ghana would draw sort of a graft in the sand on the ground. And then overnight, certain animals might leave a track on the graft, might leave an imprint on the graft, and that would be read. And of course, this would be done at particular times of the month, particular cycles of the moon within particular seasons. There's also divination by binary divination that we understand as Fa, Afa, Ifa in West Africa. The ability to count to 16, the ability to count to 256 would have just transferred over into the New World and then taken on new implements, stones, shells, seeds, and then that system would have been reborn in the West. Calling it what it would have been named, would have been titled, would have shifted, would change. Some would say that can be found in reading dominoes. Some would say that could be found in reading a regular deck of cards. When we look at Haitian divination, when we do see a outward demonstration of divination in Haitian voodoo, we often see regular cards. But there's also that element of channeling, that element of spirit possession, where spirit comes in, Loa comes in, takes over the human body, and then speaks the divination out directly. So there's a variety of systems of divination that not only made the Middle Passage and then were reborn, but also new systems that either hid behind or were masked behind, or just for sake of utility, found new world usages. Reading tea leaves is said to be sort of a Eurocentric practice, but there are elements to it that are indeed indigenous and can be found throughout the world: China, India, South America, Central America. And when I say South America, Central America, I mean the Arawak, the Inca, Maya, Aztec descendants that also became part of that mix of culture that developed these systems that we now know today as Obeah, Hoodoo, Voodoo. Indeed, there is totem divination among the indigenous people that made its way into voodoo. Crows, there's a unique relationship to crows and blackbirds here in the South. And if you feed a blackbird, it will return. It will knock on your door. It will make noise, to sort of call your attention to it. And so our ancestors had a unique relationship to the goat and the pig and the cow and the horse and the birds and the seeds of the field in a way that we've lost in modern culture. And so we could expand on what divination would look like in an Obeah setting. We can expand on what divination would look like in a hoodoo setting. Reading nature through the activity of birds is one of my gifts. It's not a gift that I talk about a whole lot. It's an on the ground gift. People who are with me, who do work with me, friends, of course, Denise Augustine, who takes that power walk with me every day, know that there's a way of counting and a way of communicating with the activities that happen in nature, a part of divination and hoodoo. Reading plants, indeed. Tapping in the power of herbs. First, you start by identification. 5, 10, a dozen, 15, start small, make a list, learn to identify, research what they do, and start basic. Basil, sage, these are very easy to grow, propagate in most places. Now, understand, it's October 30th, and some of y'all seasons are changing. Okay. And indeed, the seasons are changing just a little bit here, too. But my plants will survive the winter, usually, unless we have an unusual cold event. My plants will survive the winter. And even then, I can throw blankets over my garden, and it'll survive. So learn to identify, and not just what, you can grow hoodoo occultism, but also what might be available in your community. Palm trees, not palm trees, though they have a purpose. I was trying to say pine, Pine. Now, for those of you who live up north, pine trees are everywhere, and pine trees are seasonal. If you pay attention to pine trees, they have one look and one activity in the spring, another for the summer, another for the fall, another for the winter. And indeed, with cold and congestion and flu, learn how to utilize those dry wood pine cones. They're medicinal. You clean them really well. You boil them into a tea. You add a little onion, a little garlic, a little honey, and it'll open you up and clear you out. So start small. Start with what trees, what plants are available to you, what you can grow, but also those that might be in your community. Acorns, maple trees, all had a real life purpose, edible purpose, medicinal purpose, magical purpose to our ancestors that someone who's trying to tap the power of herbs today can latch on. We had the benefit today of apps and the internet in terms of finding out what a plant is, what it looks like, what its Latin name is, what its common names are, how it grows, how to propagate it, in some cases how to get rid of it, because many in the Western world still look at our food and our herb sources as weeds. Um, and indeed, they aren't weeds. They're the herbs, the food of the field. Yes, Moon, Luck, Love. Indeed, the Goddess Initiative. Please read the chats because they're making some powerful points in the chat. Paying attention to nature is vital, not just as a man or not just as a woman. A woman, however, learns to pay attention to nature much younger than men because it's so a part of your body. And it is so a part of ours. But this culture doesn't teach that, doesn't make that distinction. We paid attention to the sky when we were children. We paid attention to the stars and the moon and the sun and the weather. We were very aware. Many of you, particularly in the big cities, live in buildings with no windows or buildings you can't even open the windows. Could literally walk through a place like New York City and have a very limited exposure to outside if you so choose. I know when I was in New York City and it was cold, or Chicago and it was cold, from the L to the subway, to the building, and the stores are sort of built with cover and in enclosed spaces, and you can indeed avoid nature. But we exist in a place where we don't know where our food comes from. We don't know what's in our food. Some of us are not eating real food, and if you are indeed eating the pus, mucus of cows and chickens, if you are indeed eating the carcasses of dead animals only, then you're not going to gain hoodoo occultism. You're not going to gain the same connection to your herbs as one who does. There are indeed incantations that activate your herbs. There are, again, moon cycles, seasons for harvesting, planting, and then of course how they are utilized and or applied. Um, in many cases, I ingest herbs, I chew herbs, I cook herbs, I eat herbs. Many of the same herbs that I'm going to utilize or am utilizing for any hoodoo, for any root work, for any conjure. Yeah, pine is great for many medicinal, spiritual health benefits. Um, I also want to say that there indeed exists spirit in nature. It is at the very foundation of what animism is. The belief in the indigenous world that all things in nature possess a spirit. So your plants possess a spirit. And so some plants are a little bit more giving than others. I have a rosemary that's all over the place, out of control, all over the place. I have others that are a little bit more conservative, a little bit more reserved. And indeed, they have a spirit. I talk to my plants. I know my plants by name, and I also know where I can help heal and sort of move your plants into a better, healthy state, even for themselves. Because of course, a sick plant, a plant that's not getting the proper balance of water, sunlight, nutrition, fertilizer, can't give you light, can't give you everything, can't give you what you need, and then subsequently will not survive, into the next season. So building a relationship with, five, a dozen, 15 plants, get to know those plants well, learn how to use them in a tea and food, in medicine, in a bath, in application, and then add a few more to that. Where the tradition comes in is that exposure to Yoruba culture, that exposure to Igbo, Hausa, Fan, Ewe culture in terms of where those incantations were being pulled from and continue to be pulled from. Now, of course, today in 2020, people speak English. Orisha speak English. Lowell speak English. And we find a way of creating our own mantras, our own chants, our own incantations that are most beneficial to our own needs and goals. And I'm always uncomfortable when I say to our own, because we live in a very me, myself, and I based society. And I don't want the idea lost that in its most original form, Obeah, Hoodoo, Voodoo were being utilized for the health of the community. Yes, one Wapani, absolutely, to identify your plants and to even identify things that might be growing up in your garden. Okay, all of us have stuff that start growing up in your garden, and you wonder, okay, is this food? Is this an herb, or should I kill it? I have an apple tree, and right next to it, something grew up. I mean, right next to it, something grew up, just as hardy, just as strong, as the apple tree. And I'm like, okay, but that's not part of the apple. Is that something else? What is that? And I used to picture this, and indeed, it's a plant that I can't use. But those of us who have some experience in gardening, you're familiar with that, and so you pull up everything that doesn't look like what you expect what you're growing to look like. But sometimes, even in your well organized seed packets, you have other things that might be present. You have birds, especially here in the southern regions, that fly over and come from the Caribbean, come from South America, come from North America, come from Europe, and drop seeds. And so you have things that grow up that you didn't plant. So that's a great application to use. Jaconu, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says the only way Black people ago got through it is to embrace the art of voodoo, Obeah, and hoodoo. And I absolutely agree. I like to say, though it's unpopular for me to say it, I like to say that it's our salvation. It's unpopular because salvation sounds so like Christianity, and that's not what I mean. And I've got to find a better word than salvation, but it is indeed our salvation. It is the returning to the indigenous way, the natural way, the organic way is indeed our salvation and salvation of humanity. We have to move away from fossil fuels. We have to move away from all the methane gas that's being produced by thousands and thousands of herded cattle that are then slaughtered, to show up at your grocery store, to show up at your popular fast food place. We've got to. It's not sustainable. So, we've got to move backwards in order to move forward. It's a quantum metaphysical, magical thing. We have to go back. We have the time machine back to the past in order to move forward. We like to say, to know where you've been is to help you to know where you're going. You can't know where you're going without knowing where you've been. So as we get away from what's, unnatural, what's synthetic, what's, human created, what's toxic to our bodies, and get back into nature, growing our own food. Oh man, when the power is off, one of the best things was the idea that I could eat food that I had actually grown. I made a beautiful cabbage salad, regular cabbage, white cabbage, and purple cabbage, kale, sunflower seeds, and then it had sweet basil herb, meaning the leaf, the seed, and the flower. It, it was the most tastiest salad I've had, forever. Food that I grew, food that came out of my garden, food that I know, other than the rain that's falling from the sky and the water that I put into it, has no pesticides, has no toxins in it, has no herbicides in it, has no, chemical compounds in it. And so that is a major step for any Obeah man, for any hoodoo practitioner, for any root worker in getting back into nature. And I'm not suggesting that you have to be vegan. I'm not suggesting that you have to be vegetarian. Indeed, Voodoo is not vegetarian. Ifa is not vegetarian. Vegan says that even the slaughtering of a chicken, is a problem. Whereas your vegetarian might eat white meat chicken, might eat fish, might enjoy, a little milk, a little egg every now and then. And indeed, we utilize, all of these food items, in the practice of these traditions. Um, there are indeed many similarities between Obeah men and the Palero. First, there's the geographic location. Cuba, Puerto Rico, uh, Central America. So there's that cultural connection that sort of makes some similarities. And then what they do and how they operate in their communities share similarities. But we know what they are at a root is very different. Palero is very different. Then we're getting into the dead, the bodies of the dead, the bones of the dead, and then certain ritual practices directly tied to that. And again, it has its root in West African practice, West African tradition. Yeah, there's also a crow that said historically that has a connection to the antebellum South and also enslavement. There are many stories that speak of a relationship between the enslaved and a crow that might deliver a message, a crow that might do the work thereof, to go and steal food or go and capture an item and bring it back. I've come across many stories in the antebellum South between the enslaved and a unique relationship with crows. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you got to have a relationship to your plants, and they will sometimes speak to you and tell you exactly who and what they are, and then how to best apply. What do I think about the Ouija board? Oh, that's a good one. I actually have a Ouija board. I have a round, red and black um, Egyptian Ouija board. It has some Egyptian symbolism on it. Um, some of you may be familiar with this Ouija board. I can't remember the maker of the board. Not right now. I don't think they make this board anymore. I keep the planchette in a different room than I keep the board. That's how strongly I believe in Ouija boards. And like tarot cards, what are the dangers of tarot cards? What are the dangers of Ouija boards? Um, from an elemental perspective, it's wood and maybe pressed wood, manufactured wood. You know, And so you don't know the tree it came from. You don't know the process it has been through. Indeed, it has absorbed a great deal of energy, but it doesn't hold energy like many other spiritual objects, typically because it's made from cheap pressed wood. And like your tarot cards, it can hold a limited energy, but your tarot cards often have to be cleansed frequently, depending on the amount of time you spend with them in spirit. Um, it's not a strong ally like a crystal, a mineral, a stone, our metals, silver, gold. So it opens a way for lower evolved spirits, your wood Ouija boards. Heaven forbid a cardboard or paper Ouija board. Spirits that aren't quite mature can come through. Dangerous spirits can otherwise break through. There's a dynamic to utilizing a Ouija board and even tarot cards that maintains a connection to a spirit without it coming through into our world. We've rarely seen in movie cinematic demonstration, like Ghost, for instance, where Whoopi Goldberg has a otherwise ghostly, and traumatic experience with tarot cards. I have had weird, if not traumatic, negative experiences around tarot cards. Tarot cards are the most volatile tool, and indeed, Ouija boards would be in a close second in terms of volatility. And so people who use them should be in their best place, should be clean, should be healthy, should be well, shouldn't have a whole lot of shadow work lurking in the background. And indeed, you are inviting in the shadow work of your clients and the people that you utilize your tarot cards with. Now, your Ouija board is often a little bit more isolated. You bring it out and you use it in a group, but it's not like tarot cards where you might be doing that every day, every week, on a regular basis. So again, I think that sets up an uneasy environment where you can very easily bring through something in a Ouija board that cannot be controlled. Now, we got plenty of scenographic demonstrations, imaginative, creative demonstrations of, Ouija boards going wrong. How easy it is for a Ouija board to go wrong. I support that there's some validity to that. I support that the Ouija board didn't just fall out of favor. For my young audience, there was a time Ouija boards and tarot cards, for that matter, were sold by Hasbro and other toy companies back in the 50s, the 60s, and they were presented as games and toys, not real. So we don't see that as much today. And so you might say, okay, well, there are many toys, games that were popular back then. Sorry, Twister, that may have fell out of popularity. But it's not a whole lot of, Ouija board producers today. And I think there are just too many negative stories of people who've actually used Ouija boards that still hang in the air. I'd be curious to see it regain popularity. I'd be curious to see all of a sudden a resurgence of the Ouija board in social media. That would be interesting. Come on now, y'all, with your questions, your comments, your requests. Otherwise, I'm gonna go get me some water and some lunch. Tiana Bolden, greetings, beloved. Lovely profile picture, lovely avatar. She's been reading some Hoodoo books and became so lost, them telling her that she needed to do things a certain way and go out and buy this root and that and the other. And she almost gave up and said Hoodoo did not resonate with her. But she's finding my words to be so affirming with what she resonates with. And I appreciate that, Tiana. I also want to add to what you just said about, you read many books and they said, do it this way, do it that way, by this route, by that route. I like to compare that, innocently, with all due respect, to like baking. There's so many recipe books out there. Cornbread, do it this way, do it that way. Put whole jalapeno in your cornbread. Put whole corn in your cornbread. It's so many different gumbo recipes. And so some taste great. Some do well. Might not necessarily be real gumbo, but it's edible and it's enjoyable. So I think we have to consider that. I also look at it, herbology, is right in line with medicine. And particularly in the US, and I think even in the UK, we've got some weird laws about how we use herbs and plants. So some places you can't even grow them. You can't just wake up one morning and decide I'm going to grow ayahuasca or marijuana or peyote, without looking at the rules and the regulations and the governmental, oversight of where you live. I also look at herbs like pharmaceuticals. So, some combinations, some applications could really be dangerous. And I don't care what the herb is, mint, sage, if it's not applied right, if it's not utilized right, if you don't respect that plant and the power within that plant. So I know I'm saying just a little bit more than what you said. You just said you got lost. And I understand. I'm still to this day lost with algebra. Okay. Okay. I'm still to this day a little bit lost about chemistry. you know? So when we look at herbs, plants, roots, even crystal, we tend to overgeneralize crystal. But those of us who are lovers of crystal, mineral, and stone, who've got a stack of books about crystal, mineral, and stone, have to go beyond just the metaphysical books, the magical books, but also look at mineralogy, geology, earth science. And so I think that's where it becomes a little complicated, Tiana, for some of us. And then, of course, you have the book authors that are writing for popularity, that are writing for fame and fortune, that are writing for entertainment. And that's okay. It's room for entertainment. It's room for folks to be a little creative. It's your writing, it's your book, it's your publishing contract, But I agree with you. It doesn't make it easy for a learner, a student who doesn't have a teacher, who doesn't have a mentor, who may not have godparents to sort of, walk them along. Even if we look at the generations of the family, the absence of, whole families having, your mom has a father and a mother, your dad has a father and mother. In the best case scenario, you might know one or two or more of your great grandparents, and with them is a wealth of information. But even that's being lost in the environment that the world exists in today. I'm grateful to have my mom still with me. I'm grateful to be able to ask my mom questions. I'm grateful to be able to jog my mother's memory. Well, what did you do? And I'll ask my mama this: what were you doing in 65 and 66 when the riots was going on and Black Power? My mom was in college at that time at a Black university, historically Black university, Lincoln University. So I asked her those questions, And so when your grandma's still alive and grandpa's still alive and uncle and aunt, and crazy cousin is still alive, it's a time to ask questions. And sometimes you get a I don't know. Sometimes you get a, well, baby, I never thought of that. Sometimes you get, bits and pieces, but they're all helpful. I would even say they're all healthy, helpful and healthy. So I hear you. Without those leaders, those mentors, those teachers, those guides, we live in an artificial world now where we think we're going to get all of our education at school, kindergarten, 12th grade. No, we're still being taught by our parents. We're still being taught by our experience. We're still being taught by the conscious people in our space that are consciously teaching. And so we ourselves have to have that same opinion, that same attitude. I have to be consciously aware, consciously willing to participate in the act of both teaching myself and learning for myself. And so I offer you, Tiona, to be more patient with yourself, to be a little bit more forgiving. My beloved godmother, Iyanla Van Zant, likes to say, it is unkind and it is unloving to sort of beat yourself up about something that you don't know, you were never taught. It's unkind and unloving to judge yourself on, your struggle through, learning a new culture, new language, new tradition, new plants, new usages. Be more kind with yourself. Be more patient with yourself. Matthew Ferguson, I agree. This pandemic and this shutdown, and in some places, you all are facing a second complete shutdown. I think France might be one of those places. Can you validate that for me, my France listener, that might be headed into a second shutdown? But it has reinforced growing your own food. It reinforces being able to capture and hold water. It reinforces, our ability to store and to keep. If you're used to going to Walmart or wherever you shop, every week or every few days, and then there's a shutdown and there's no toilet paper and no this and no that. Many of us have had to re-examine how we live. So great points. Yes, I agree. People kill people. But I think that if you are mature, if you're an adult, if you are legal, and you all know what I mean, you don't have the bad things, the negative marks on your on your record, you should absolutely be able to legally be armed. And that might sound a little Republican. There's Democrats, there's liberals, there are green people who support gun rights. And for me, particularly women and women with children, if I had my way, every legal black woman should own a gun. Every legal black woman should own a gun. With or without children, I have to retract that. Because, yeah, you want to protect your kids, but you also want to protect yourself. A single black woman doing her thing, making her living, going about her business should have a legal gun. Jakanu, yes. It's absolutely for our preservation. It's absolutely for our survival. It's absolutely going to be for our resurrection. If things continue as they are in society, if things continue as they are, and someone's pushing for a race war, someone's pushing for civil war in America, and with my knowledge of COINTEL and the new knowledge of Russian and Iranian and Ukrainian interference, I'm not always sure where it's coming from. I think sometimes it's being exploited from outside the country, and they know that it's a problem in the country, and so they reinforce that. These plants, they reinforce that in social media. On the other hand, we absolutely got problems of race, class, ethnicity, our relationship to the government, our relationship with police in America. And then we stoke the fires, if you will, ourselves. So sometimes I don't know if it's us back and forth with it or if it's coming from the outside source, but we have to get to a place where we rise above it grow above it so that we can better operate moving into the future. Hoodoo occultism. Now listen, your questions are hard because I know who you are. You ain't got no business playing with no Ouija board. Let's be clear. Okay. There are limited usages, limited purposes for a Ouija board. In the tradition, when we look at Lukumi, Santeria, we know what Misa is. And Misa is a seance. It's a seance. It's designed to call up, to pull up, to support the dead, and to receive messages, healing, connection, with the other side. I don't suggest doing that through a Ouija board. I just don't. There aren't very many ways to protect yourself with the Ouija board outside of your own spiritual strength. Because, everyone has a hand on the planchette. There's at least 3 or more people involved in the usage of the Ouija board. And then often it's, to ask questions, it's fun and games. So there's limited ways of protecting yourself. I keep the planchette separate from the board. I don't let people play with the board. I don't let children use the board. I just don't. Um, and so it's very limited ways. Some people say, everyone has to keep their feet on the ground. No one can move their hand from off the planchette. No one can get scared and then jump up from the table. All of those things lead to a negative outcome with a Ouija board. So the only people that should be using Ouija boards are already spiritual adept, have a purpose or a reason, and in my opinion, that makes it least likely to have negative outcomes from a Ouija board. In high school, Sandra C's friend used a Ouija board, and the spirit she communicated with began to influence her. Yeah, I agree. The lower, less evolved, more debased jinn and spirit can come through paper and wood. Paper and wood. When you start getting into quartz, minerals, gold, rubies, diamonds, now you're talking about a whole nother level of energy. And so those lower spirits can pass through that. Just like it said that, some spirits can cross water. Some ghosts can cross water. Just like we use red brick dust and certain jinn can cross it. It's how you tell who your friends are. And some people cannot cross that red brick. So I just don't suggest it with the Ouija boards. I just don't suggest it. I would need a whole lot more detail about why this is even happening. Whose board is it? What kind of board it is? I would need a whole lot more questions answered. Malachi. Yeah, Hoodoo is very personal. I would agree with you. Hoodoo is very personal. In an environment where you're already cut off, limited socially by the constraints of enslavement, Hoodoo, in its most organic and natural form, was indeed much more personal. We're already forced to go underground, undercover, to hide our practice, to hide our tradition. So that further feeds, I believe, the goddess initiative, that personalizing of the practice that we find in Hoodoo. I absolutely agree with you on that. Sandra C, I hear you, I see you, and I'm there with you, beloved. I rarely use tarot cards today. So please stop sending me requests to do tarot readings. I rarely use tarot cards today. Um, I'm more in line to do full voodoo divination, um, Delagoon, Marion Delagoon, etc. I don't really use the tarot cards as much today. It's more a novelty. I indeed will do it for camera, but in my practice with people, and particularly with meeting the needs of the questions that would normally come up in a tarot reading, I'm finding that there are much more evolved systems for addressing it. So I agree. Yeah, I agree. I use tarot cards primarily for other people and for other people who are not in ATR. Um, Europeans, Asians, black people who just are somehow cut off from the root. The world, the populace. And when I think of Jackson Square here in New Orleans, when I think of the fortune teller, they're sort of out in the open. When I think of Eve's Bayou and Diane Carroll, and she's sort of sitting out at the fair. She's a little bit isolated from the fair, but she's out, at the fair, out at the public market. It's a very public tool, the tarot, and it's good for that. It's universal in that way. But you have to be that much more protective. Now, if I had to compare protecting myself using tarot from protecting yourself using Ouija board, Hoodoo occultism, those are two very different things. And certainly there are ways to protect yourself, cleanse yourself, with tarot that are very overt and out in the open, physical, as opposed to with the Ouija board. Yeah, you can set up stones around you. You can set up light around you. You can put down, protective circles before you get involved in the Ouija board. But you're likely to get a skeleton key type response. you know. I have many favorite herbs. I have a garden, JP Tarot. So I have many favorite herbs. Absolutely, rosemary, more than one kind of basil. Holy basil, for instance, is very different than sweet basil. Um, Aloe, um, elephant ear, um, wandering Jew. There are herbs that are just abundant in New Orleans. Again, people call them weeds. They'll take over your house, your yard, the sidewalks. So there are many that I could easily call a favorite. Chamomile, easily call a favorite. Rose, the leaves of roses, yeah. Um, One of my favorites. Pink rose, red rose, black rose. I have favorites now. So, so yeah, what I have on hand right now, it mirrors some of what I just listed. Even frankincense and myrrh, which people don't quite understand, is a resin and it's also edible. Has many usages and would be added to that list of things that I would say would be my favorite. You are in UK. Okay, now wait a minute. Now I got a friend, Shamafia. Where is Shamafia? Because I wanted to talk to you, Shamafia. You put up a post. Shamafia, are you still here, beloved? Shamafia put up a post. Yeah, she's still here, I hope. The other day in Europe, I believe Shamafia is in the UK, right? Aren't you in the UK? You were out in the middle of a field and you found a mushroom. And Shamafia was talking about how beautiful and the fairies have made this mushroom. And I want to know to what degree Shamafia knew what that was. Because I knew what it was right away. That mushroom was a particular color and type. Okay. And so I'm curious, Shamafia, what were you up to? Were you hunting? Were you harvesting? Did you just see the mushroom, as a part of your journey? I'm really curious, beloved. Did you actually partake of the mushroom? I'm really curious. Yeah, you have to be careful. Think my sister is reminding us to be careful with our herbs, flowers, barks, roots. All natural doesn't mean to consume it as much as you want at any time. They're not all of the same potency. Absolutely. And again, our beloved sister who got lost, Tiana, it's like being a pharmacist. It's like being a chemist. It's like being a dietitian or a nutritionist. There's a whole degree of knowledge and information that comes with these plants that we don't always feel as motivated to investigate as we do the more fun parts of having herbs and access to them. My sister, in my opinion, is a herbalist master, particularly in dealing with health issues, health complications. I'm learning a lot from her. She feeds my garden, I feed her garden. She feeds my knowledge, I feed her knowledge. So I'm grateful for one Wapani and what she brings to the garden, the library of information about these plants and their usages. Yeah, there will be another lockdown soon. Let me scroll down. Shamafia, where you at? Shamafia. Okay, beloved, is there a delay? Are you hearing my questions? I want to know about that mushroom. I wish you could call in or jump in on screen. Let me see if I can find the name. And if you don't have camera, my phone lines are still open at area code 845-277-9143. Greetings, area code 610. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Tatatat with a lot of T's, and I'm calling from Pennsylvania, U.S.
Oh, greetings, beloved. And what's your question or comment today?
How do I address you? Like, what name?
Divine Prince.
Divine Friend?
Divine Prince. This is a Divine Prince. How can I help you?
Okay. Divine Prince. I took some, divination classes and, started a radio show and, people always said that my readings were accurate, but, once in a rare while or in my free time, maybe like 20-30% of the time, like spirits will start to say, just kidding, or something like that, like just to like make the reading very like just botch up the reading basically, like if I'm curious about something, I want to know something. Sometimes like they botch up the reading. I'm confused as to why they, say, that'd be fine, and then like, just almost like pranking or something. I don't know what they're doing. The Divine Prince.
I'm concerned. I'm greatly concerned just by what you're saying and the implications of what you're saying. So let me take it a little bit slow. Please forgive me. I'm not trying to be offensive. Now, when I hear you say, I'm asking questions and then they sort of joke or don't give, I would then be concerned about what type of questions you're asking and why. So first off, you can't consult divination regularly. I don't care if it's crystal ball. I don't care if it's tarot cards. I don't care if you can't consult divination every day, several times a day, or every week, or separate time a week, and especially for yourself. Now traditionally, one divination in a 30 to 90-day period. Traditionally, I think we've become too over reliant on readings and divination from a personal perspective. And so I don't mean you personally. Don't be offended by what I'm saying. But there's some people who, you're trying to figure out what you're going to wear the next day from your tarot cards. Your very next move at the grocery store from your tarot cards. Your very next move on your job from your tarot cards. And that's too much. I think there's a space for us to hear what Spirit has to say, just like hearing a prophet, just like hearing a guru, climbing the mountain to hear what the guru has to say. And then you climb back down and you go back into the stream of life. And then you apply what's being said. You give it time to plant and to see it grow and to come up. Some people do a reading on Monday and they want to answer on Saturday. They do a reading on Saturday and they expect to see a manifestation in a week. And it really does not work that way. It works just like nature. There's a season for the moon. There's a season for the stars. There's a season for the weather. So that's just what it sounds like. You might be overreading, and if you start overreading, they will play with you. Also, if you heard what I said just before you called, Ouija boards and tarot cards, oracle cards, are the most volatile form of divination. There's no system attached to it. There's no perimeters attached to it. So it opens it up to all level of spirit, jinn, demon, speaking through your forms of divination. Real spiritually empowered spirits, Orisha, Loa, first would speak through our cards, will not speak through our Ouija board, will not manifest that way. And two, even if they did, beloved, they wouldn't joke with you. They wouldn't prank you. So based on what you said, and me as a practitioner of over 40 years, you're playing with jinn. You might not know it. You might not want that. You might not have invited that. But you're playing with jinn. You're playing with jinn. And that's why the Ouija board is so dangerous, because you already are going into it with the mindset that I'm communicating with the dead. The dead. All the dead ain't happy. All the dead don't want to be there. Some of the dead don't know why they're there. Some of the dead, want to come back and are not very good, spirits. And so tarot is very similar. And I think some people feel that if I do oracle cards as opposed to tarot cards, that makes it somehow better. And in fact, you're now stepping out into chaos magic, because many of these oracle cards don't have a foundation in tarot. Tarot is very specific, just like your deck of cards. It's got a king, a queen, a jack, you get spades, etc. So tarot is an organized system unto itself. So now you got bird tarot, angel tarot, zodiac tarot, pizza tarot, 38 flavors of ice cream tarot, and we're calling them oracle cards. And so now we're open up to a whole nother range of spirit. The author, the producer, the artist, how are they living? The person who painted the pictures on your oracle card, how are they living? What was their connection to spirit? So all of that then becomes problematic for the reader. So I would suggest that you watch what you're eating, more fruits and vegetables, more water. Watch the amount of sun and moon energy you receive, caller, especially if you live, caller with all the T's in her name. Say your name again.
Tatatat.
Tatatat. Especially if you live in the northern region or you live where it's now fall going into winter. You need more sunlight. You need as much exposure to the sun, the sky, as you can. Now, I know you have to work, live your life, do your thing, find 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. Some people like who smoke. I don't smoke really, but people who smoke like to take a smoke break. So you take a 15-minute break to go outside and breathe the air, to make contact with nature, to make contact with the trees, to make contact with the sky. And I guess I'm speaking to all tarot readers, and I'm also speaking to Hoodoo Occultism about protecting yourself from the Ouija boards, and then ensure that the environment. I'm sorry, Tata. I'm having a problem remembering how to pronounce your name, but make sure you are doing it in a clean environment. You can't be reading tarot like on your bed where you sleep. You should have a sacred space where you pray, a sacred space where you read, a sacred space where you invite spirit into your environment. You don't want to invite them in your kitchen, your bathroom. You don't want to invite them everywhere, all over your house. So clarify where you're actually doing that. And then again, I would strongly suggest that you read less for yourself. Most readers don't read for themselves at all. At all. So I have people who say, oh, well, I don't read. I don't charge for readings. I just do it for myself. That's dangerous.
When you say I'm playing with Jing, is that Jing the vital force, or what's Jing?
Jinn, Jin, Jinn. It's an Arabic word for.
Is that the vital force?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is that the vital force of the body, or
no,
what is that?
Jinn, Jin. I think you're hearing chi. Chi is the vital force in the body. I'm talking about Jinn, Jinn. Jinn. Jinn are like demons. Jinn are not elves, are not fairies, have a lower vibrating energy, and can become demonic. Jinn.
Okay.
So if they're joking, if they're pranking you, if they're making fun of you, you've opened a door to something that you don't really want. And though right now it might just seem pranky, it might just seem comical, it can become bad. It can become dangerous. And they're testing you right now in terms of your comfortability, what you're comfortable with. So if you're comfortable enough to have them speak and joke with you and then still keep doing that same practice, you're walking into a bad place, beloved. So I need you to pull back. I really need you to go on a fast, a reading fast, where you don't read at all for at least a month. Don't read at all. Not for yourself, not for other people, for at least a month. Get some clarity about your walk, your purpose. And then when we do read, it should be for a very specific purpose. It should be for very specific subject matter. But it can't be so general. It can't. It can't be your consistent guide. That's not the proper way to utilize divination. Give me a moment. Area code 404. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
This is Shamathia. You requested me call in.
Yes, beloved. Now, where are you?
Yes.
You're in the UK.
I'm in Brooks, Georgia.
I'm
in Brooks, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes from Atlanta.
Really? So the
yes,
so the
but
picture.
I have the talent of many voices, so I love the British voice. I can do it on tone.
No. What made me think you were in the UK had more to do with some of the pictures that you post. So you posted a picture in Instagram. I believe you were in some kind of field, and there was a mushroom.
Yes, that's my yard. Yes.
So that mushroom is in your yard?
Yes, and 6 more popped up yesterday, and they're now their sun out, so they're not out now, but they're coming all over my area. And I've been working with the goddess Hecate, and she's been showing me all kinds of things, slowly, obviously. But yeah, I don't know what, I just was drawn to the mushroom. I know it looked amazing, so I had to stop for a moment. I see cool stuff like that all the time.
Okay, beloved.
Okay.
How far is that mushroom from where you live?
I would say, I don't know, like 150, 200 feet
Okay.
from my house.
Great. Can you and I know we're live on air, I'm putting you on the spot, but can we make some kind of arrangement for you to send those to me?
Yes, if they're still there when I get home, I can, sure.
Now let's be clear. I don't want you to mention, where you live or anything like that. What you're looking at is called a fly agaric, Agaric, or agaric, fly agaric. It's a very specific mushroom. And that's why I thought, okay, you had to be in the UK, because often when I see a documentary, there are people hunting for mushrooms. It's usually in the UK, and that's one of the main mushrooms that they're looking for. Now, this mushroom is also called a fly amanita, Now, it is poisonous to some degree, but it's also hallucinogenic. So it's a mushroom that people would eat who were looking to have a psychedelic experience. This mushroom was also used as a fly poison. That's why it's called fly agaric or fly amanita, because back in the day they used it as a fly poison and to keep flies, out of your house or away from where you prepare food. But it is a popular mushroom, beloved. Okay.
Oh.
And I'm willing to send you a little donation. If you can, pack up a few for me and don't put them in plastic, put them in brown paper bag, and then put that inside, inside your box. I will be eternally grateful.
Sure. Okay. It had grown twice the size.
90 seconds.
They get big.
I mean, like, it was amazing. I mean, like, and I'm actually amazed. But nature, I'm always amazed by things I find in my yard, and I'm interacting with the A-Way and the Fae and all those awesome things all the time. So, thank you for your education. I was told, beloved,
when I seen that picture, it stopped me in my tracks.
60 seconds.
And even then, in that moment, I wanted to know, does she really know what it is she's looking at? And when you talked about, the fairies and, because you're very lyrical, and you talked about the fairies and stuff, I just said, okay, she's got to know what that is. She's got to know what that is she's looking at. But so I'm amazed to even think that you had no idea what that was.
See, the mysteries are among us.
Yeah.
I just knew it was amazing. I knew it stopped me dead in my tracks, and I was already late for work. But I don't care if I'm late for work. Work is work. That's magic. So, So thank you very much for the education. I'll look it up, and I would definitely, I will email you and correspond off here, of course.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for calling in. And caller.
Yes, thank you so much for all you do for us.
Thank you.
We love you so much.
Thank you. And to my caller, area code 610, spell that with a D. DJINN.
Hello?
Yes, I have people in chat who sort of corrected my spelling on Jen. So some people spell it JINN. You could also find it DJINN. Okay, do you have any other questions for me?
That's all. I really took what you said to heart. I was thinking I want to do like a 10-year fast reading.
That sounds great, especially if you sound, pretty young. So that sounds great. You have time to sort of cleanse yourself, be a little bit more conscious of what you're eating, and the type of energy that you are now drawing to you, that you are now opened up to. Um, Fortunately, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would definitely slow up on that just a little bit. That form of divination that you're doing, just enough to get a better understanding about what it is that you really want from spirit, that you really need from spirit. It should be about your growing, your development, your moving forward. Just don't let it be entertainment. And I know that's easy to say because of the way we see, divination and tarot cards and whatnot on TV and in pop culture, but it shouldn't be entertainment. And once you start sort of communicating with the spirits on that level, they will trick you. They will trick you. They will lie to you because they are now feeding that part of your ego, and you are feeding that part of theirs. A higher evolved ancestor, if we're talking about the dead, or a higher evolved spirit, is not going to prank you. It's not going to joke you. It's not going to sort of pull your leg like that. So I strongly, am just asking you to be careful with that. You're not communicating with something good. Though it's not cursing you, it's not shouting at you, it's not saying bad things, does not mean that it's not a negative event. And so that's why I say it's a jinn, as opposed to just calling it a demon outright. Jinn have varying grades and degrees. And so some can be worse than others, some can be more playful than others. But generally speaking, they exist in a vibrational lane that's not mature, that's not growing, that's not moving forward. And so those voices can create doubt in you. Those voices can cause you to question yourself or question otherwise the more useful information that might be coming through in your divination. In our culture, meaning in the West, we tend to think, reading oracle cards and tarot cards doesn't require training or mentorship. But you're giving us a very healthy example as to why it absolutely does. I just don't think everybody should just go in and buy some cards and start reading. It's just not a good look. So I appreciate you. I thank you for your patience and your humility and your ability to, hear my message, and not be offended by it, but actually find, something that might be good for you out of it. But it is a sign that you have a spiritual gift. It is a sign that you are able to, open a portal, open a doorway, with your tools. But based on the symptoms of what you're describing, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. So take care.
Thank you so.
Thank you. I appreciate your calling in and sharing your story with us and your experience with us. And I look forward to meeting you back here again sometime in the future. I am going to move forward. I am both thirsty and hungry at this point, but I do appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time out of the middle of your day to be present here for another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, remembering and understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. I am open for your appointment requests. You can contact me at Divine Prince at houseofthedivineprince.com, Divine Prince at houseofthedivineprince.com. You can also visit my website at www.houseofthedivineprince.com, and I will schedule your appointment at my most earliest convenience. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe.
Congo Square. The Omas Indians prepared this place for us.